Hey, folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Casting Angles with the man himself, Mac Brown. Mac, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Marvin?
As always, just trying to stay out of trouble. How are things in your neck of the woods?
Well, we're in that transition right now from after Labor Day to where, it's going to get a little bit slower in town for a month, and it ends up being one of my favorite time of years to go up in the park. The park's not going to be near as crowded in national parks, so it's kind of nice having it slow down for a change.
Yeah, and we'll be stocking DH here at the beginning of October, and we were talking before we started recording that we thought, some people fish through the summer and they go chase bass and panfish and stuff, but then some people just kind of take a break and they kind of get ready to get back into it for the fall. And, for those folks, we've talked a lot about practicing with intention and all kinds of self-improvement techniques, but we thought it might be helpful to talk about, how to think about mastery of a particular task.
Yeah, I think that's a really good lofty goal for sure, is try to get to the, work through the four stages of, basically 4 stages of learning to where people can start to act without putting thought process in, like a flow state kind of thing. And that's when usually people are at their best with any type of kinesthetic movement, is when they don't think about it, they just do. And of course that comes through, repetition and actually practicing things to where you don't have to try to think about how you're going to do something on the water. And that's a big difference. And yeah, that's kind of what we were talking about before we started too. Just, I think about this a lot in teaching lessons and things and on the road with educational things, Marvin, that, a lot of when I was 20 years old, the difference is if you were giving somebody, let's say whatever task it is, say it's throwing a curve or learning to double haul or whatever it might be. And the older you get, you start realizing that's just the performance of a certain skill versus the retention of that skill. So that's kind of where I'm at this age a lot, thinking about retention way more than I am saying, oh, look at George, he just did this. And, then you look at George 5 minutes later and he's totally lost it again because it's not in a flow state. He's thinking too much. And usually their mind comes into play. And that's why, getting the repetitions even that we talk about, you have to have really good days and bad days to start to appreciate retention,
Yeah, and you kind of have to break it down into kind of teacher and student, right? And so, when you're teaching, because we always talk about having a goal, like what's it for? So, as the teacher, you want to be really reductive, but also too, your goal is if you teach someone to perform the task on Monday, you want to know that when they're not with you on Saturday, that they can still perform that task.
That's right. And I think the only way that really works is covering the where, when, the how, why, what. I mean, when people start to understand why something works the way it does, even if kinesthetically they're lagging behind, but they understand how it works, they'll get there as far as retention. But if we don't have those other things in retention, I mean, what happens a lot in kinesthetic sports is really performance. A lot of times performance anxiety, with the act of, people will freeze joints and you show them a whole motion of what you want their whole body to do. Next thing you know, they're just bicep and tricep casting it like a lollipop rainbow. And it's like nothing's clicking. But there's a good example of freezing because they didn't do the motion they're supposed to do, because then they're actually using a freezing type blocking. It blocks the body from opening up and using their whole body, And that goes away once people start to understand the where, when, why, what, and how things work. Then the freezing and all of that stuff disappears entirely, and that's where they're getting towards mastery, as you call it.
Yeah, and I'd say too, like on the student end, when you're on the practice field, if you can go out and repeat the task, 3 or 4 times on different days, you probably might be time for you to kind of move on to master the next thing, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Once you get consistency, then it's time to look to the next thing. Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to look at it, just because like in curves and, advanced line layout and control, there's a lot of ways to throw those, and it's like you master it one way and you do that a few weeks and it starts to click. We'll go to step 2 and then play with that one. And if that one gives you trouble, go back and make sure you still got step 1. And then after a while, you're on step 4. And before you know it, that's how you're kind of building your mastery of line control. And people always ask, well, why can't I just use one? Well, that's really self-explanatory because they all use different airspaces. And what happens when you got 5 of those airspaces blocked with trees or cover or that kind of thing? Well, now we need a 6th one. That's what makes people go back home and think, well, what do I need to do now? But yeah, that's the reason there's so many.
Yeah, because I mean, it's interesting too, right? Because it sounds complicated, but actually, if you take this approach, it makes it simpler because you're not having to remember, here I am, I want to do an upstream mend because this is what the current's doing and this is where the fish is. And I think that's actually, you and I have talked about this a lot. It's kind of a knock we have on kind of the way people teach people. It's also kind of a lot of the stuff you see on social media. But if people started to just understand the basic mechanics of the cast, kind of like that class that we put together, life on the water
Right.
would be infinitely easier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. It definitely is. Hey, congratulations too, Marvin, for the Outdoor Writer Association. You want to tell us a little bit about speaking over there?
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so we had to skip. It's actually been a month, I guess, Max, since we spoke. And it's because I guess 2 weeks ago I was in Chattanooga at the OWA's annual meeting. And I was fortunate enough to win first place in the podcast radio category in fishing for an interview I did with Andy Mill last year. And so it's super excited about that. That's always awesome. But then I was also excited because I was actually one of their keynote speakers and workshop teachers and spoke a lot about, how to authentically use AI in your work process. So it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. And, obviously I'm super honored with the recognition.
Oh yeah, well that's a big honor for sure. And before we go on into the teaching stuff deeper as well, I wanted to express our condolences there. We lost a lot of legends in our sport since I talked to you last week. And AK Best, Flip Powlett, and Rick Shelton from Birmingham all were, big into the sport of fly fishing for years and gave us a lot of the nuggets that we hold on to today. So our hearts go out to their family and friends, and wanted to mention that too, because that's a huge loss to our sport.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of amazing, the luminaries of fly fishing we've lost over the last, I don't know, 2 to 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, that's really, really unfortunate. Rick was, he helped us a lot down there out of Birmingham with the Loop as an assistant editor for that. And, he was getting ready to take his master's test, and he was definitely really changing a lot of the casting events for the Southeastern Council throughout the South. I mean, he was really, really helping teach a lot. And he was the epitome of somebody that was going after, becoming a world-class teacher for sure. And, so that was a huge, shock with what happened, with him. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah, and it's an amazing too, seeing the outpouring for Flip on social media, how many people he touched and how many people he brought into the sport, either as anglers or to become guides or outfitters or industry people. Just absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I read a good, write up, and I know that from talking with him before, but Flip was the real deal. I mean, as far as a hunter, I mean, he liked to hunt, he liked to fish, and he really understood the balance of, one of the best things I think I learned off of Flip over the years was talking about, the resources and infinite. And with technology, as technology, keeps getting bigger and bigger with, like, to apply it to bass fishing. Okay. You got sonar, you got people spending 30 grand on electronics that know exactly where the fish is. Where's the sport in that? So I tend to agree heavily with Flip. The more we keep getting more and more advanced, when are we going to draw the line on going back and doing it primitive? I call primitive. Fly fishing's about as primitive as you can get. You know what I mean? You look at water, you read the water, you make a cast, and if fish is there, Lord willing, it eats. But I don't know. I'm pretty strongly opinionated in the fact that when we get all this technology, I mean, are we going to start hunting, deer and gazelle and everything else with drones and drop a net from the air? Or are we going to go out with archery? You know what I mean? And just sit and do it like years ago. I mean, he had a lot of really good opinions about that kind of stuff. And I think he's really the first person that I know that brought that up a lot.
Yeah, and I would say, AK Best was Tyre's tire for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with dying, and we used to read a lot of AK stuff, 3 decades ago, and I learned a lot of stuff about dying with vineyard dyes. And then, of course, Davies helped me a lot with that too, the vineyard dyes course coming out of the UK. And but that's where I first got my interest from it, was from AK's books back then. And of course, I'd see him at the shows. Since back in the early 90s, AK used to come to a lot of the shows, and he'd be like featured tire and that kind of thing. So I got to spend a lot of time with him on the road. And yeah, he definitely offered a huge amount of innovation there for tires worldwide.
Yeah, and you mentioned Davey, that's a great segue to get us to talk about your classes. You've got a casting school, a guide school, and then I guess probably in about 6 weeks, you're going to be down in Arkansas teaching with Davey, right?
That's right. We have a wet fly boot camp, and we're going to cover, some dry fly and nymphing techniques as well, but most of it definitely will favor heavy into the wet fly game. That's October 24th to 26th. And then we got a school here, 5-day school, the 15th of October to the 19th. And the casting school's about topped out. I mean, I could maybe take one. There's one guy that was going to sign up like weeks ago, and he keeps saying he got to check on the date. So, I mean, I probably got one spot left for the 13th of September to the 14th for the advanced line control class here in Bryson City.
Well, got it. And, folks can just go to your website and check all that stuff out. And then, they can get in the boat too. If they want to reach out, probably, I know you're an email man or smoke signals. You don't like social media. So we'll encourage people to reach out that way. And, it's almost pumpkin spice latte time. And folks, as I always say, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Mac.
Tight lines, Marvin.